Hey guys, I'm Nick and welcome back to the channel and welcome to 2022. I hope everyone had a great New Year's celebrations and we're ready to get into some great Star Trek for the new year. So today I'm talking to you about episode 6 of Star Trek Prodigy. We're having the break from Discovery. That's going for a few weeks off, back on February 10th. And in the meantime, we've got Prodigy back on TV. So yeah, this episode of Prodigy, I gotta say, has been one of my favorites so far. I really enjoyed this episode. Some great fan service in this episode and some huge fanboy moments, you know, looking at this, looking at that, all over the place. From returning characters to locations, to holodeck stuff, and a bit of everything. I think this episode was doing what Prodigy kind of does best, which is take those iconic aspects of Star Trek and introduce it to younger audiences. But I think at the same time here, they're not only introducing it to younger audiences, but they're also paying some great fan service to us fans who are watching the show and are giving us all these little Easter eggs, which is fantastic. As always, guys, if you're coming to the channel new, please don't forget to subscribe. And if you're a long-time viewer but haven't subscribed yet, please don't feel scared to click on that big red subscribe button to stay up to date with all the latest Star Trek news on YouTube. So this week's episode was entitled Kobayashi, and for good reason. It was all about the iconic Kobayashi Maru test that Starfleet gives its cadets to train them for to come to terms with no-win situations. And I knew right from the start from this episode we were going to be up for a little bit of a treat in this one, and I don't think it disappointed in that regard. Early on in the episode, we obviously got a little glimpse of Dal playing the little disc and cone game that was first introduced in the Next Generation episode of The Game, the one that Wesley Crusher and I think it was Ashley Judd in Next Generation, and I think it also popped up in the last season of Lower Decks. Now, we also find out at the start of this episode that use of the proto drive on the ship has actually propelled these guys significantly further than they thought it would have. In fact, they are no longer in the Delta Quadrant and they have flown all the way to the Gamma Quadrant now. We didn't get any sense of location or what they're doing in the Gamma Quadrant or what they're going to do. Hopefully that will come up in future episodes. It would seem that the Protostar is able to jump from quadrant to quadrant in a matter of hours, which would have come in handy back in Voyager's days, obviously. Each episode now of Prodigy seems to be introducing new Star Trek concepts to the younger viewers. Obviously, we've had things like warp and the phases and tricorders and everything introduced and everything. And in this episode, we get our first little glimpse at the holodeck on board the Protostar. It's obviously goes through all the programs. There's an Andorian program there, Murphs walking around somewhere on Andoria, haunted castles and Vulcan combat arenas, not to mention Janeway's old Jane Eyre program back from Voyager days. So it was kind of like nice to see these little iconic locations and stuff pop up in the holodeck on board the Protostar here. And even more of a buzz was the fact that when Dal spots the Kobayashi Maru test in the list of programs on board the holodeck and boots it up, we obviously get the iconic Enterprise D bridge as his chosen bridge location for this particular run through the test. And that's not where all the little Easter eggs end. Obviously, we've got Dal choosing his crew from all the historic Starfleet officers throughout the course of Star Trek. And what a treat it was to see Uhura and Dr. Crusher and Odo and Spock on the bridge with Dal. This was like one of those big fanboy moments. I think it's like, oh, you know, who's going to be next? It was great. I loved it. Even though at times with the dialogue, I think particularly with Uhura and Spock's dialogue, Scotty, who appears later on as well, where you could tell they had kind of cut and pasted dialogue back from the TV series in the 60s, and the audio quality didn't quite match up with everybody else's audio. The only actor that actually came into the studio to voice their lines for real was Gates McFadden, who came in to voice Beverly Crusher. You could kind of tell that she'd done her lines of dialogue currently, but in the case of our other actors who have since passed on, sections of dialogue that that have been chopped from various different episodes to kind of string together the narrative that played out in the holodeck program of this episode. And it was kind of cool, I thought. I kind of found myself listening to the lines of dialogue, and because they were cut and pasted from past Star Trek episodes, to try to guess which moments they were from. Because obviously most of the actors who were in this scene have since passed on. The fact that we had these characters back and they were saying, you know, they were essentially being in a new episode, you know, or being having a cameo sort of thing in this episode, I think that was just fine. I was more than happy to put up with a little bit of cut and pasted dialogue just to see all these iconic Star Trek characters in the one room together. It was one of those moments where I think I had a big smile on my face throughout the whole episode, particularly with the holodeck stuff in this one. And we even got a little bit of a different tone, I guess, with some AC/DC kicking in there. As part of the music soundtrack, which I thought was a novel approach. Obviously, you wouldn't necessarily think AC/DC and Star Trek would necessarily work, but in this particular circumstance, I think it worked really, really nicely. I also loved the moment when the holodeck program concluded. Spock did his typical Vulcan salute and live long and prosper, and Dahl goes in for the high five, which I thought was great. And obviously in the B story of this episode, we had Gwyn and the others trying to decipher this hidden code when asked about the origins of the Protostar and its mission and so forth. Obviously there are blanks in Janeway's memory that she couldn't access, and for some reason the hidden code is in fact written in Vana Cut, the language of the Diviner and Gwyn. So there's some sort of weird connection there between them and this Starfleet prototype vessel that was in fact captained originally by none other than Chakotay. And we get a glimpse of this at the end of the episode where we get a hidden memory fragment return, and it is Chakotay, and then Janeway realizes that the crew of these kids isn't her first crew on board the Protostar. Her memory has been altered to omit certain details, and we get to see Chakotay as captain of the Protostar. The question is, what was Chakotay doing on the Protostar in the Delta Quadrant? And why is certain code on board the ship written in Gwyn's native language? Lots of mysteries in this show. There's a lot of mysteries to uncover. I kind of get a sense we're on a good path. I have great confidence in Prodigy. I think sometimes we get stuff going on in Discovery where you go, oh, is this going down the best path? Or sometimes I feel like the narrative on Discovery kind of goes off the rails a little bit, but I kind of get a sense that Prodigy is on a good course. This show is really growing on me in a huge way. I'm in fact enjoying it probably more than Star Trek Discovery at the moment. Even though it's meant for kids, I'm watching Prodigy with my family. I've got a couple of young kids who are just the right age to watch it, and they're having a ball with the show. I really am enjoying it. All in all, I think this episode was great. What a treat it was to have all these returning characters pop up in this holodeck program to help Dahl on his Kobayashi Maru test, even though he didn't do that well on it. But he was, you know, a good one to persevere and try to do his best, even though it was a no-win scenario. It was very reminiscent, in fact, of the Lower Decks episode where the crew were doing holodeck simulated missions, and Boimler went back many times to try to do the whole Borg rescue mission thing. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments section. If you're liking the galaxy projector I've got as part of my new background with the nebula and the stars or whatever, you can pick yourself up one of these from Galaxy Lamps. I've got a link in the description. Check that out, where you can get 10% off one of these with the coupon code NICK10. They're really cool. I think it's a good addition to my set. Or if you'd like, check out my merch store where you can pick up some cool Star Trek flavoured t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, caps, all that sort of stuff. It really helps support the channel, and you can pick up some great merch there for yourself. And guys, please, as always, leave a super thanks if you're able to, like and comment, and I will be back very soon for my next video. Catch you soon.